Hey guys, welcome back. As I promised, I'm going to talk a bit about benchmarking your investment. So let's say if you invest in gold, in Indian stocks, whatever, you want to always kind of benchmark it against something. And it's kind of your main KPI in some sense that you want to look against. So let's say if you invested, in this case, in an Indian stock market, you could see this is what the chart says. So you can see the census return, and the green is the adjusted true return. So I've corrected it for uh, the uh, the the value of rupee dropping, let's say. So I've done it from 2015 all the way to 2024. So if you see that, for example, in the year 20 uh, yeah 2017, the Indian market returned almost 27% return, which the true returns were about 22%. But the same year, the market in the US only returned 7%. So you could see this was a good time to have your money in the Indian market. But there are other times, for example, over here in 2019, the market in the US returned about 32%. And even though we thought the Indian market returned about 14%, its actual return was only 9.38%. So if you actually draw a trend line according to this, which is like a moving average or just an average of this, you will see that you're losing a good 5% return on your investment. So I always benchmark my Indian return with respect to the US stock market. So this is something that is very important to know. So always compare your returns to the US stock market, or in this case, this is a European US based index. So I always compare to that because that's where I'm holding my euros in. I have everything in euros, so I compare it with this one. So let's go to the next code. I've written a bunch of code. Sorry about all the long code. Here I compared some of the very popular stocks that we have. So for example, let me turn off a few of them. So if you look at the S&P 500, which is the SPY, which is this blue line, you can see there are a few years of great returns, a few years of negative returns. If you average this out, it's about 10% is what returns. So let's say if I was one of those people who had invested in Nvidia before. So if I had put in the money here, when the US market returned me a 15%, I made a negative 10%. The next year made about the same. Then I bet a bit more. Great returns, amazing returns. Yeah, and then starting to have some negative years. So yeah, of course, if I average this, Nvidia is doing amazingly well. You would have beaten the SPY. But again, are you able to withstand these huge negative downturns? For example, here in 2022, the value of the stock dropped 50%. But if you see the SPY dropped not so much. Also remember that this SPY also contains some Nvidia stocks because it's the top 500 companies that are together. Let's add in Apple. You see it's a bit more stable, but again, when there's a negative downturn, there's a bigger ones. When there's an upturn, there's a much higher upturn. You can add in Google as well over here. Again, when there's a negative downturn, Google went down almost 40% in stocks. The other time not. And I can keep doing this, and I added a few more random stocks. So I picked up, I asked the code to give me a random few stocks from the S&P 500, and you can see what happens. So I like to keep myself in this blue line. That's what I like to do, which is the broad market or S&P. And I always compare myself against this. So if you're able to consistently beat, let's say this blue line, yeah, then you're doing a very good job. But if you're not, yeah, then you're kind of losing out on the returns. For example, over here, if when Nvidia stock fell and you said, "Oh shit, I have to sell all of it," and then you move your money into S&P or some other stock, yeah, to get back the same amount of money, you need to get 100% return. So from here, you need to make almost 100% to get back the same amount of money. If you're invested in Nvidia somewhere mid 2021, you lost 50% to get back in. So yeah, this is what I wanted to talk about. This is how I benchmark. I always look against the broad market. mainly in the currency that I hold. And if you're doing well according to that, if you're beating that consistently, then you're doing a good job. If you're not, then unfortunately you're better off just buying the market. And let me tell you, like 99% of the people, or 95% of the people, according to academic literature, cannot beat the market. So this is something that you should also take into account.